Wonderful day, wonderful day, wonderful day indeed. This is your neighborhood sensei Fouché, and I always begin my shows by first strongly suggesting, because a lot of folks don't like being told what to do, true indeed. So, moving forward in conversation, I most emphatically implore for all of you beautiful, wonderful, self loving, worthy individuals to stay woke. But in the process, never get all stressed out. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you take all necessary meditative practices and procedures, including environmental change, when and if necessary, to relax. And always, always, always be prepared to take those notes. You know what I'm saying? That's what being smooth is all about, taking many notes and being assertive in action when necessary. Let me give shout out to WWE Marketing, World Wrestling Entertainment. This wonderful new t-shirt that I am sporting, turning pain into art. I mean, dig that. You know what I'm saying? Because that's basically what this concept is foundationally based on, is pain and understanding how to move that pain into art, into a form of beautiful appreciation. Like, look at this character. You know what I'm saying? Not only is he on strings, but he's all twisted up as well. He's twisted up in being controlled. You know what I'm saying? Instead of being free from this control, being free from those strings, not being confused and twisted. And that is the goal. That is the aspiration. Creating the art from the pain. I was thinking of this specific term I've been referencing the last few days. Emotional manipulation. Now, we all know what the word emotional means. And we all know what the word manipulation means. Now, combine those two words together. Let me give you an example. There's someone that is always needy. They always have problems, you know what I'm saying? And you are always a very open listener when it comes to engaging, to absorbing the information that's laid out within these problems. You know what I'm saying? And you're a great sponge. You know what I'm saying? You could absorb, a good amount of this information. We'll just leave it at that. You know what I'm saying? I was about to go into a form of a liquid reference, you know what I'm saying? But we don't need that. Now, if you were to need that individual's ear in return favor, I'm confident, that the type of person that is an emotional manipulator would be pretty dismissive, and they would pretty much not be really responsive or engaged. And it'll be extremely noticeable in their body language, along with, their physical action within the moment. They'll probably deflect out of what you're trying to tell them into something that has nothing to do with what you're talking about. Or what about the type of person where, they always need something? You know what I'm saying? Money, um, favors, any kind of favors, you know what I'm saying? But let it be you in a rare moment or instance that requires something and you ask for that specific individual to assist you, they're going to be quick to back down. They're the kind of people that are leeches. That's a great example. They're a leech. They'll suck you of your energy, but they'll never replenish back. They're thieves. They will steal your emotional security and not return it back. You don't even have enough for yourself, possibly because of the overexerted energy that you put into someone else in this close relation. And they never replenish. They always take, but they never ever give back willingly. And if they do, they'll almost make you feel like they were forced into doing it. Now check that out. You know what I'm saying? How that sound? Emotional manipulators. And these types of people are immature. All that being said, this fantastic novel that we have been covering, and we're about to get into chapter 8, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature People. And I was in between a burp, so pardon me. Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents is the actual title, but in between my burp, I was stating that I replaced the word parents with people. Because as we all know, again, parent is just a specific reference of person to you or anyone in the closeness of relation specifically. How to heal from distant, rejecting, or self-involved people. And on the book, it'll say parents. And you could take this in reading reference specifically to parents to begin, because that's what is supposed to be the attention grabber. We all have a lot of resonated feelings that still carry with us, in regards to our past and growing up, and how that tends to make it more difficult to actually move in proper accordance and be a successful adult. Lindsay C. Gibson is the author, and she's a doctored psychologist. Was your parent difficult, immature, or emotionally unavailable? And I always read the back cover to remind us of the specific topic of reference that we're dealing with. So you are most in tune with the direction of the information that we're sharing. And once you become base knowledge, you could evolve the references further into other relatable titles that are similar. If you grew up with an emotionally immature, unavailable, or selfish parent, you may have lingering feelings of anger, loneliness, betrayal, or abandonment. You may recall your childhood as a time when your emotional needs were not met, when your feelings were dismissed, or when you took on adult levels of responsibility in an effort to compensate for your parents' behavior or partner. You know what I'm saying? Because they're more like a weak link. And you have to increase your energy and your responsibilities in order to maintain for the both of you. You know what I'm saying? You're pulling, almost like a lazy horse. You got one horse pulling another horse that's more lazy, as opposed to both of them are moving in a sequence of accordance. These wounds can be healed, and you can move forward in your life. And that's what we are covering, is these tools and this information in order to help you understand not only what it is, but where you need to go, what you need to do, how you need to think. Even more, how to let go. Chapter 8, how to avoid getting hooked by an emotionally immature parent / person. How to avoid getting hooked by an emotionally immature person. Because there are plenty, you know what I'm saying? I could testify. There's a lot of them, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of these bugs, these leeches, and yeah, they come in swarms. Individually, they're around, but collectively, it's like a swarm of individuals in one large demographic. A common fantasy among children of emotionally immature parents is that their parents will have a change of heart and finally love them by showing concern. Unfortunately, self-preoccupied parents refuse all invitations. These immature people, no matter how much you try to lead them, they're always going to be dismissive and self-absorbed. So again, unfortunately, self-preoccupied parents refuse all invitations to fulfill their part in their child's healing story. And you could also relate this to spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, you know what I'm saying? Brothers, sisters, cousins. They're so self-absorbed and so egocentric, they're not going to put in the work. They don't even care to put in the work. Like to them, it's just in one ear and out the other. Made me think of the old school movie Menace to Society. It's like Pops is always preaching that religious stuff to me and Old Dog, but it was in one ear and out the other. And then Buddy wound up dying at the end. A bunch of folks wound up going down because, he had a neglective attitude. Focused on their own healing fantasy, they expect their children to make up for their childhood hurts. You know what I'm saying? They expect for their kids to be the adults because, they haven't grown up yet. Like they want to rely on their own immature children naturally to try to be equal or lead them. Like how that sound? You know what I'm saying? That's the tail wagging the dog. Seeking their parents' healing love Many people hop around after their parents like hungry birds, trying to elicit a crumb of positive response from them. In adulthood, these children often learn a variety of healthy communication skills and hope that these skills will improve their relationship with their parents. They think they might finally have the techniques necessary to draw their parents into a rewarding interaction. Three key approaches will help you free yourself from getting caught up in your parents' emotional immaturity. Detached observation, mature awareness, and stepping away from your old role self. And we're about to itemize all of these, so just hold tight. Detached observation. The first step in gaining your emotional freedom is to assess whether either of your parents was emotionally immature. You've probably decided that at least one of your parents fits that description. That's why we're paying attention, or you bought the book, or you're listening to the information that I'm reading. Such a parent can probably never fulfill your childhood vision of a loving parent, ever. So don't expect it. You know what I'm saying? It's fool's gold. The only achievable goal is to act from your own true nature, not the role self that pleases your parent. You know what I'm saying? Like, basically, you have to be the very assertive adult that you have trained yourself or hope for yourself to be. You can't win your parent over, but you can save yourself. As a reminder, enmeshment occurs when parents don't respect boundaries, or when people don't respect boundaries, project their unresolved issues onto their satisfying my fault. Let me go back. As a reminder, enmeshment occurs when parents don't respect boundaries, project their unresolved issues onto their children, and get too involved in their children's business. In families dominated by emotionally immature people, enmeshment and playing roles are valued in order to keep the family close. Like a whole bunch of drama. You know what I'm saying? Like, you need the soap opera. You need to be the character in the soap opera, because if you're not the character in the soap opera, then you don't feel like, you have any value, or you have no kind of identification. Like, you need that what's the word I'm thinking of? Let's go back to that. Of course, genuine communication and emotional intimacy are absent in such families. No one's true self is ever acknowledged. Further, in an enmeshed family, if you have a problem with someone, you talk about the person to other people instead of going to the person directly. And I was talking about this earlier in another conversation, is cowards. You know what I'm saying? Those are the type of people, they'll talk behind other people's back, you know what I'm saying? And they will not engage with the person that they may have a problem with, or the person has a problem with them, and call them out. And instead of, readdressing that person, like, they'll cower it up, and then behind closed doors, they'll throw a whole bunch of shade on you. When people keep themselves poised in neutral observation, because it's a trap, to try to get you emotionally off balance, so that way you're reacting as opposed, to processing. You know what I'm saying? Being responsible instead of impulsive. They can't be hurt. So again, when people keep themselves poised in neutral observation, and that's what I was leading to, you know, they can't be hurt or emotionally ensnared by other people's behavior, which is the trap because, they're used to being extremely resentful and vindictive in their responses instead of accountable and informative in being in true information when being informative, just to kind of spin that together. Becoming observational. When interacting with emotionally immature people, you'll feel more centered if you operate from a calm, thinking perspective rather than emotional reactivity. Because emotionally immature people, once you challenge them, they're going to try to get you charged up by their deflection. That was the word I was probably thinking of a quick minute ago, is deflection. Start by settling yourself down and getting into an observational, detached frame of mind. And let me keep a finger note, and let me tell you a short little story in between this. The word coward came up in a conversation earlier in my day, or yesterday. And I was talking about, let me see, the specific reference was, we'll focus on coward. And, bully and the coward, right? So, when I turn away, person decided to mumble behind my back. And when I came back, I readdressed knowing that someone said something and I didn't really hear clear what they said. So I challenged them to say it again, and they said it very low tone. And then instead of get overreactive, I started questioning their understanding of vocabulary. So I'm like, what's a bully? And then a bully can also be perception, depending on, who's telling the story and how they feel. Like, that's a perspective reference to label someone. But then when we moved into the word coward, then it was like they didn't quite understand until I started breaking it down. Like, a coward is someone that's going to talk behind someone's back. A coward is someone that is very vague. You know what I'm saying? You have to almost force them to tell the truth as opposed to them willingly speaking because, they don't have any shame in not only what they're thinking, but what they have to say. So when you wind up understanding that their response is manipulative attack and resentful attack, then you should know that with an immature person, I have to deal with them more at an astute response. You know what I'm saying? Because the whole idea is for them is to lower me down to their level, because then that works for them. It makes them feel in the right, which they will be, because their goal is to have you fall down to the same level of immaturity. So that way you're beyond more frustrated than you already are because of their confusion. And then they'll feel entitled, for you feeling bad about how you treated them. So becoming observational and being more in a calm process in breaking their misguided thinking by utilizing the art of language in communication. You can count your breath slowly Tense and relax your muscle groups in a systematic sequence, or imagine calming imagery, which is like maybe close your eyes, think of the ocean, look up in the sky, look at the clouds, start to daydream about shapes and patterns and what they look like, anything to break you away from that manipulated tension. Next, your job is to stay detached emotionally and observe how others behave, just like a scientist would. You know what I'm saying? What words would you use to describe others' facial expressions? What is their body language communicating? Does their voice sound calm or tense? Do they appear rigid or receptive? How do they respond when you try to relate? And I was just thinking in my pause, this is how you control the narrative and completely shut them down. Like, they should be in foolish mode after that. You know what I'm saying? Because their challenge was confronted with mature intelligence and proper relation. If you're practicing observation, or if you're practicing observing your parent or other loved ones and find yourself getting emotional, your distress is a sign that your healing fantasy has been activated. You've fallen back into believing that you can't be okay if they don't validate you. Like, you don't even need their validation because, what you are saying, is actual fact. You just saying what is true to let it out, expecting for them to absorb that and validate you in being right. Like, don't expect that. You know what I'm saying? Stupid is as stupid does. Like, dumb is just going to continue to be dumber just because. If you start slipping into your fantasy that you may be able to get the other person to change, you'll feel weak, vulnerable, apprehensive, and needy. This extremely unpleasant feeling of weakness is a signal that you need to shift out of the responding emotionally and move back into observing mode. Again, this extremely unpleasant feeling of weakness is a signal that you need to shift out of responding emotionally and move back into observing mode. Once you find yourself going into spaz mode, as I would say, you have to really check yourself like, yo, I am really about to argue with an idiot. You should be more in a debate with another intelligent individual. But if you find yourself arguing, you know what I'm saying? Like, you should really be checking yourself like, I'm actually yelling at a grown person like a child. And then that's you also practicing and engaging in immature behavior, which is what they want because that's the level of how they operate. If you find yourself becoming reactive, silently repeat to yourself, detach, detach, detach. Make a point of consciously describing the other person in words silently and to yourself. It's like, man, I already know what kind of person this is. And, here I am going into over emotion mode because this person that is extremely detached does not agree with me. Make a point of consciously describing the other person in words, silently to yourself, as I was just saying. During a stressful interaction, this kind of mental narration can center and ground you. And there's different ways of using that self-conversation in order to put you back in place. Like I was stating before, my thing for me that I tell myself is, yo, dude, you are arguing with a dummy. You are arguing with an idiot. Like, you find yourself, like, you should only be strongly instructing young children. But if you find yourself yelling at grown people like they're children, like, man, you really need to really change not only how you're speaking, but probably like disengaging from not only the conversation, but the relationship. Whenever you try to find the exact words to describe something, it helps redirect your brain's energy away from emotional reactivity. Let me read that again because it almost sounded choppy. Whenever you try to find the exact words to describe something, it helps to redirect your brain's energy away from emotional reactivity. And I think she just forgot to add a word. Silently narrating your own emotional reactions can give you that extra bit of objectivity that cools you down. If the other person is still getting to you, find an excuse to put some distance between you. Use whatever excuse you need to take some time to get back to yourself in a more detached, observational mindset. As you can see, straying observational, matter of fact, excuse me, I misread. As you can see, staying observational isn't passive. It's a very active process. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you smart to reassess. It's also the royal road out of emotional enmeshment. As you practice observing, you'll become stronger and more confident in your ability to see what's really going on, especially now that you have more of an understanding of emotional immaturity. You no longer have to be the mind in observational. Oh, my fault. You no longer have to be the upset, helpless child devastated by pot shots from your parent or other person. Your clear mind and observational attitude will keep you strong no matter what the other person does. Relatedness versus relationship. And you have to pardon me for not staying in sequence with my sentences. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to kind of get lost in keeping within sequence. Relatedness versus relationship again. Observing allows you to stay in a state of relatedness with the person, or they say parents, or other loved ones without getting caught up in their emotional tactics and expectations about how you should be. Relatedness is different from relationship. In relatedness, there's communication, but no goal of having satisfying emotional exchange. You stay in contact, handle others as you need to, and have whatever interactions are tolerable without exceeding the limits that work for you. In contrast, engaging in a real relationship means being open and establishing emotional reciprocity, which means reciprocation, emotional reciprocation, exchange, an equal exchange of having communication and relatable communication, soothing communication. If you try this with emotionally immature people, you'll feel frustrated and invalidated. As soon as you start looking for emotional understanding from such people, you won't be as balanced within yourself. It makes more sense to aim for simple relatedness with them, saving your relationship aspirations for people who can give something back. So, relatedness versus relationship. For those that didn't understand that whole sequence. And first, let me look up a word to define it for anyone that doesn't understand it. Enmeshment. Because I've said it a few times and I know what it means. Enmeshment or enmesh is a verb. Cause to become entangled in something. Involve someone in a difficult situation from which it is hard to escape. And that is emotional manipulation. You know that you're going to involve someone in something that you are making impossible to move on from. You want them to help you, but it's not that you really want their help. You just need someone as a distraction to sponge into that chaotic situation or problem that you have. You know, your goal is not for the problem to be fixed, but have someone hold hands along with you on the road of problems. And that's enmeshment. So, when we talk about relatedness versus relationship, right? You have to realize that for people that understand and deal with the deeper definition of value and the respect of value and self-worth, those are the people that you need to have the deeper and most intimate conversations with, as opposed to someone that is very careless and dismissive and pragmatic in their thinking. You know what I'm saying? Then you have a very relatedness, a related type of conversation as opposed to a relationship. Those type of people, you know, you really don't give your deepest self to or share the deepest of information with. Another thing that we were covering was becoming observational, you know, and I know I was ad-libbing between it. Becoming observational is really when you're dealing with specific types of people that lack a level of maturity. You need to be most honest in who they are. And when you're most honest in defining who they are, then you'll be more observant into interacting with them within the interaction. You'll be more in a processing when communicating with them. Like you'll be extremely careful in your thinking before speaking in conversation when you communicate with these type of people. You know, it's almost like, you know, you got to watch what you say around these people because, you know, they'll manipulate information and create detrimental effects because they'll never speak in accuracy about what you shared with them. You know what I'm saying? Almost like two-faced people, to be in relative definition or similarity to what I'm trying to explain or describe. And I think I'm going to leave our reading where we're at this moment, because I don't want to kind of go too far and run out of time, because time is infinite. You know what I'm saying? And I did ad lib a bit, and I wasn't sure if I would be able to cover this topic or this chapter in full anyway. You know what I'm saying? But we covered what we covered, and we caught a good amount of fair time. That's probably more in line of where I want to go with these shows, you know what I'm saying? But we'll probably be right at that 50-minute mark, or 45, the more I keep rambling. So we are in chapter 8 again. When we continue next week, how to avoid getting hooked by an emotionally immature parent / person. And like I said, man, the traps of dealing with these people, and now that I'm not in reading, I'm gonna be most honest. Like, it's easy to get frustrated when you're speaking to someone that is extremely less educated in most specific areas, and try to counter converse with very vague statements and very attacking responses. And it's a trap, because they're so confused by, or they're embarrassed. Let's even go further. They're embarrassed by not being able to control the narrative and fool you into emotional manipulation. You know what I'm saying? So then they'll try to attack you in order for you to diffuse you and sink you out of your higher state of being, because misery loves company, and they welcome the discomfort. They want you to agree in them being miserable and stating that they have no control in what happens and how it progresses or can regress. So be careful in these conversations of these specific people that you talk to. You know what I'm saying? And I hope I was in best clarity and not confusing in my explanations and interjections within the referenced paragraphs that I was reading forward to all of you wonderful audience members. But on that note, let me cut out of here and save tomorrow for another day, and state that this is your neighborhood Sensei Fouché. At first, strongly suggesting, because a lot of folks don't like being told what to do, true indeed, or they're just comfortable in their immaturity and don't choose or don't want to be challenged. You know what I'm saying? So moving forward in conversation, for all those interested, you know what I'm saying, I most emphatically implore for all of you beautiful, wonderful, self-loving, and all of you know who you are, worthy individuals, to stay woke. Don't let them put you to sleep. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you take all necessary meditative practices and procedures, including environmental change when and if necessary, not to be all stressed out, and relax. And always, 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 always be prepared, because Sensei Fouché is always taking those notes, even in those observation interactions. I'm always taking notes. I'm looking at your body language. I'm listening to the type of words that you're using. You know what I'm saying? If you are taking this more personal or listening or absorbing more informatively, be smooth in unity. One.